Let's record the thing. So you have your song, you know what you want, you have your references in mind, your vision for the project, you know the arrangement, you have a rough sort of blueprint demo done, you've gone through the pre-production process, you got the gear that works, that is perfect for the song. You've done the sound check, you know where to put the mics, you know how to set up your instruments, you know where the room sounds best, you've done all the prep work. The day one at the studio sort of is done and you've got a sound check recorded that sounds awesome. Now it's time to hit record and record the final takes for this. Hello, welcome. My name is Benedikt Hein. I'm the host of this show. I'm a mixing engineer. I've been doing this for quite a while now. We are mixing 200 to 300 songs every single year. I've been doing full production before I specialized in mixing fully. So I've been a full-time audio professional for, 16, 17 years at this point. I run a studio called Outback Recordings, and of course this platform, the Self-Recording Band, where we help you make exciting sounding records from your jam space. If you are a home recording, DIY producer, DIY artist, this show is for you. So glad to have you if you're new. If you're coming back as a returning listener, obviously always happy to have you. Thank you for tuning in again. And we are in the middle of a series that we're doing, which is covering the entire production process, start to finish. We are at step 5, the recording session, like I just said. We've covered the big picture foundation in the beginning. We've covered the gear part. We've covered the pre-production process. We've covered the setup and soundcheck process. Now it's time to record, like I said. And we're going to cover this topic today with the wonderful, beautiful Manel Espinosa Berenguer from Spain, fantastic music producer and friend of mine and co-host of this show. Hello, buddy. How are you?
Oh my God, I'm good. I just came back from walking around in the mountains, so that's always a good thing. And yeah, just in case you guys don't know me, I'm Manel Espinosa, and I'm a music producer and mixing engineer from Spain. Always happy to help you turning your demos into finished songs through a lovely process.
Love that. Cool. Yeah, so you're going to know a lot about the step of the process that we're going to talk about today, because when you work with artists and you turn their demos into final recordings, part of what you need to do, probably one of the most important parts, is to get the best possible takes out of them. If you work with them directly, if they record themselves, there's only so much you can do, but if you work with them directly, part of your job as a producer is to guide them to get the best emotional, exciting, whatever it takes out of them. And the challenge when you are a self-recording artist is that if you don't have a producer there with you, you need to be able to do that yourself or with your bandmates. And as we always say, the song is king, the song comes first, and right after that comes the performance, like how you play that song. This is way more important than the gear, any of the other stuff, because at the end of the day, we're connecting with the song and the delivery of it, the emotional content, that's just the feel and everything. That's just so important, and it can all fall apart in this part of the process, or you can really shine. And even with like technical imperfections or something not ideal about your setup, you can still make an awesome recording if you just deliver the right way in front of the mic. So in this episode, we're going to help you with that and go through the things that really matter there. If you haven't listened to the rest of this episode series that we're doing, you can go back to the previous 4 episodes and listen to those, of course. And then after this, we're going to continue with everything that comes after the recording until we're done. And then this is going to be our start to finish full series that I'm going to recommend everyone listens to from now on. So yeah, the one thing before we get into the actual bullet points that I have for this and the things I want to walk you through, I want to share a story real quick from one of our coaching students or members of our coaching community, where today when I logged into our portal, I do that every day to give people feedback, to give them next steps, to make sure that they know what they're working on and how they can implement things and have their feedback and all that. So I did that today. I logged in and I checked out my notifications and messages there. And there's one artist we're working with. His name's Pete. And Pete is just in the process of optimizing his home studio setup a little bit. Part of that is like optimizing his room for capturing better source tracks, like we covered on these past 4 episodes. And we did very simple things to improve his recording situation there. And I share this because I was really blown away by the difference that I heard today. He's just using an office, I think, normal room inside of his house to record music. and he plays a lot of acoustic guitar and records his vocals to that. And so we looked at an easy, simple way to improve the recording situation for him to be able to capture better source tracks and ultimately better performances because of that and all that. And so what he did was just build a couple of really basic absorbers. I think he had one or two already, and then he built some, and he put them in one spot in like a corner of his room in a certain way that we decided to do it. And he sent me pictures of it. And then he did a quick A/B recording of just him talking before the absorbers were there, and then with the absorbers were there. And he was talking and clapping and sending me the A/B. And it was such a night and day difference that I was smiling when I heard it. It's like even him just talking into the microphone saying, hey, this is me standing here without the absorbers. Hey, this is me after treatment. It was so clear to me that everything will get better for him now because he's going to have an easier time mixing. He's going to be able to hear himself more clearly and better during the recording. The overall quality will just improve a lot. And it was done with very, very simple, basic things that don't cost a lot of money, that are easy to do, didn't take a lot of time. And now Pete is set up for much better recordings, able to get it right at the source, and he won't have to fight those things in the mix later. So I just want to share that because it was one of those examples where, people try for years and years, and then you do one quick thing and everything gets better immediately. So just a side note. And it all comes back to the whole theme of getting it right at the source. Just a reminder for you in case you didn't optimize anything about your space yet. Maybe it's time to do that. Cool. Manel.
Yeah.
Performances in front of the microphone. Vocals more than anything, but any instrument, sort of. How do you... Let me say how I can ask this question properly. When you work with an artist, how do you go about this? Like when you hear them perform for the first time or even before the session starts, is there something that you do to prepare them for that? Or do you just listen to what they would do naturally and then after a while step in and then guide them like a little bit to like optimize their performances? Like, is there a certain approach that you go through, a certain method? Maybe it's different from artist to artist. I just want to hear your general thought on this because I know some producers jump in really quickly and that can easily destroy a session if you do that too quickly. Some don't say anything at all because they're too afraid, and then there's obviously like the middle ground. So like, how are you approaching this topic? How much you guide an artist through the performance?
Normally, when we start the recording session, let's start from the very beginning. So they come to the studio and everything is ready. Basically, like the microphone is where it should be. The session is open, everything is ready. So what I would normally do is do a quick, setup in terms of monitoring, like to check if they hear themselves as much as they want, or if maybe they want more of the instrumental or more of their voice or more reverb, or because I just can't, I don't know if I don't know them before. I don't know what they like, right?
Yeah,
exactly. And then what I normally do is I let them sing the whole song for like a couple of times or something like that, and I, probably I'm adjusting the gain, listening to what they do to like take something into account and stuff like that. And once we have that set, then I ask them how do they prefer to record, because some of them prefer to keep doing the whole track over and over, and then I select the parts or whatever. And some others, which I think the most of the people like to record like this, like they prefer to record one part, like one section, then the next one, and that's how it goes. So normally when that happens, that's when I tell them things, if I feel that something should be. But I don't think, like, if I think about me as a producer, I don't think I'm super like interventionist, right? If I feel that it would be better. But if they know their stuff and it sounds good, then I don't say much sometimes, right? Yeah. I think when I talk to them, it's more about the attitude
Yeah.
more than telling them, look, you're out of tune in this note all the time, because that's not always easy to fix once you're in there. And it's nowadays it's kind of easy to fix later. So I think the most important thing is that the attitude is right for the moment and the song and all that.
Yeah. And I love that. It's a lot about communication and paying attention to whether or not the artist needs it. So how does this translate to a self-recording artist or band? For the self-recording solo artist, it's going to be the hardest because you don't have anyone next to you guiding you through it, and it's hard to get a feel for your own performances while you're in the middle of it. So I think what you need to do when it comes to actually performing well is, first of all, the better you are prepared. So if you haven't ignored steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, then it's going to be easier for you, because then you know that all you need to focus on is the moment right now, capturing the best possible performance. If you are constantly trying to fix technical issues, or you have to go back and do something about the song, or there's some other thing you need to worry about, it's going to take you out of the zone. And so the better you're prepared, the better the song is prepared, the more you've practiced, and the better everything's set up, the easier it's going to be for you. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you're on your own, you just need to, I think, record longer. Set a loop or something on a certain part, or maybe the entire song, and just sing it a couple of times before you do anything. You have to get into it. You have to, feel it, record a couple times, and there will be, and then just pay attention to how it feels to yourself while you're recording, and don't listen back after every single take. Just keep the loop running and record and record and record. And at some point, as you're warming up and as you're getting into this, at some point you'll feel like it doesn't change much anymore. Maybe you arrived somewhere, and like the takes might be different still, but it's not like really better or worse. You kind of hit the sweet spot, and then there's no point in doing much more at this point. I would then hit stop, and then I would take a break maybe, and then I would listen to my own takes and try to listen as a listener as much as possible, and just for the feel. And like you said, Manel, we tend to really focus on the tiny annoying technical details. Like we might pay attention to a weird clicky noise that we make with our mouth, or we might listen to whether or not we hit that note accurately, or we were a little early or late, or things like that. And while that matters to a degree, what's more important is, like you said, the attitude, the vibe, the feel. Because if there's this one note that was a little sharp, and maybe you came in early on that other word, if it all feels great, then you could easily move those two things and have a perfect take, and nobody will ever know. But if you sang it perfectly on time and in the correct pitch and all of that, but it just doesn't feel like anything, there's nothing you can do to bring that back. So try to ignore the technical stuff to a degree and listen more for how it feels, the emotion, how the tail of the words, like how you say that, how if you pay attention to whether or not you believe yourself actually when you hear that. The tonality, the way you pronounce certain words, like that kind of stuff really matters much, much more. And so I would always do a longer batch of recording, and then taking a short break, and then listening back and trying to zoom out a little bit and don't focus on the technical details too much. So, but when you are a band, then you can do some of the things that Manel just said there as a band as well, where you can have a second person in the room who can guide you or whoever is performing through the performance. And I would always, if that's the case, if there's two people, I would let the person sing or play a couple times, even if it's terrible, to just let them warm up, get into it before I would say anything, because sometimes it just takes a while and then it's fine, and you don't want to point out any mistakes or flaws and after the very first take. It's like it really matters how you communicate there, I think, as a team or as a producer with an artist. And so that is one thing that I would absolutely do. Give them a little bit of time. And then at some point, when you notice that there is the same thing over and over again that you really need to address, or when you feel like they really need your help, then what you can do is that what really matters is how you say it. And I don't know if you do that consciously, Manel, as well, or if you just do it because you're a good person in general and it's natural to you. But it's a difference. Like, let's say somebody is recording and it really is not that great. So you can say, man, like all of that was total bullshit. except for that one section, you can say that. Or you can say, this one part, how you sang that word, that really felt great. I want more of that in the rest of the song. That is you're saying the same thing, but you're saying two different things, basically. It's the way it works. And so it sounds logical and like almost trivial, but so many people don't do that, especially if you're friends. And I'm saying this specifically because if you're friends in a band, you think you can say everything because you know each other very well. You can take it, and you can joke about it, whatever. Still, for the person singing or recording, and especially singing, they might laugh and they might, it might seem like it doesn't matter, but it does. It does something to them if you criticize them. And so just because you're friends, you still have to be aware of that coaching and guiding someone through a performance is critical, and that there's a lot of psychology involved, and how the person feels and how you make them feel while they're performing really, really matters. So I don't know, Manel, if did you have artists where you felt like they could take whatever, like it doesn't matter what you say, they are just full pros, they have no ego and they can move on? And maybe you also had the opposite, where someone was like really fragile, or you had to really pay attention to what you say because otherwise you would immediately ruin the vibe of the session. Do you remember like situations like that?
Not really. I think just because, as you said, just because of the way I am, I've never tried to like push anyone, and I think I've been pretty lucky because I've never had a singer who was a total disaster. So it always was about tiny little things, and also the fact that I am a singer, and I know how the mind of a singer works sometimes. I think I have an advantage in terms of communicating because I know how to tell them to do something in a way that it's not, because you can tell, I don't know, you can tell an artist to like, I don't know, sing with more attitude or whatever. But if you tell them maybe, can you please, for example, open your mouth more?
I like that.
Then you'll see straight away more like intensity coming out and more openness coming out of the vocal. So yeah, I've never been too pushy or anything, but I don't think I've never ever worked with a singer who was very sensitive. So
yeah, that's good.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. But also not everyone tells you, right? But I mean, you have to get a feel for that. Just saying, I've witnessed it in the past where bands, especially when they're friends, they sometimes forget that in this moment it is still that the person can still be very insecure, and that it's you still have to pay attention to what you're saying, even though you're friends. That's what I'm saying. So I've witnessed that a couple times. And this brings me to the next point, which is also to have an open conversation before the session about who is supposed to be in the room. Because just because you're 5 people and it's important for everyone, it doesn't mean that everyone has to be there on every session. It can, it can be much more productive and also a better feel for the performing person if it's only 2 people, if it's just one who operates the computer and one who sings or plays. Maybe the other 3 don't have to be in the room. If they actually help the session and they pay attention, they are not distracted on their phones or like doing weird things in the room, then they can be here if it's constructive and all that. But make sure that it's really the case. I had it sometimes in my studio as well, where when I was still tracking here, my live room's over there and there's a couch behind me, and so sometimes the singer would be in there and then the other guys, the girls of the band, would be back there. And then even though there's this wall between us and everything, and I have a talkback button that I can turn off, if they see that they're distracted, they're on their phones, they're like, making jokes, whatever, laughing, it can kind of make them feel weird because they don't know like what it's all about. Are they laughing about me or something else? Do they even pay attention? Then maybe they want their opinion on someone, but nobody listened, nobody paid attention. They can get a little weird. And so in those situations, I sometimes had to say to the rest of the band, hey, if you want to be here, you're part of this and you pay attention. And if you're not, then you can just leave and do your stuff outside, but then we can focus on what matters in here. So yeah, you can have this open conversation in the band too. Is that not everybody has to be here, and if they do, they should contribute to the session in a good way, I think. So yeah, there's a lot that can go right or wrong, was what I'm saying, when there are multiple people working on a song together, and you might not be aware of how important that is. People often think, well, I just sit down and record my stuff. There's not much to it, but there is. And this whole part is so huge that when you listen to interviews of like successful producers, you'll hear stories like that all the time, where even their own staff, their own assistants, their own engineers, they have rules around when somebody stands up and says something and when they're just quiet and don't say something. And this is not because they're like tyrants who just like to punish their employees. It's because someone saying something wrong in the wrong moment can completely ruin a session with an artist. So that's why there are these rules around these things in studios. And that's why the skill is so important. And it can easily get you fired in a professional studio if you don't follow these rules. And so obviously there's probably nobody's going to lose their job in your case if somebody says something stupid, but just as a reminder as to how important it is for the result you're getting, for the emotional impact. And the goal is to get the artist into the zone as much as possible. They need to open up. They need to sometimes go to places emotionally that they're not comfortable in and they've never shared it maybe before, and you want them to be able to do that, to open up. And in order for that to happen, you have to do whatever it takes, because that is what ultimately will connect with your audience. Nobody is interested in a boring song with a boring delivery, but if somebody wrote a really sad song about something, or they have a really inspiring story to tell or whatever, that needs to come across a certain way, and they need to go to that place when they perform. They need to find those emotions in them and then bring them out, which can be very tough to do. It's like, And so do whatever you can to make that happen, to make them feel safe while they're doing this, because otherwise it will not connect with an audience either if it's not authentic, if it's not believable, if they don't really go to that place.
Yeah, and I think that you really need to learn to read the room, because sometimes silence is not the good choice. Like back then when I was singing in a band, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this band had another singer before me, and I was the guitar player, but he decided to leave, so I started to sing. And we had this session, we were recording 3 songs, and we all very insecure about the whole thing, because also this guy was the main composer, so it was impossible for us to make our new songs sound the same as the past songs, just because we were different people making the songs, different people singing. And I remember that I was there singing and no one was telling me anything, any sort of feedback, good or bad. It was all silent.
Yeah.
And so I was even more insecure.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to learn how you say things, as you said, right? Because sometimes, for example, I like when people tell me things directly, right? If something doesn't work, I like you telling me, hey, this doesn't work, and that's fine. Some people may not take that in a good way. But for example, I hate when people tell me those things in a non-direct way, like, I don't know, for example, saying that maybe, what do you think if this other person sings that part instead of you, right? So like you're telling me this wasn't right. Yeah, so you kind of have to learn how to like manage people, right? Or treat people differently, depending on. So
yeah, reading the room is key. That's what you said there.
Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that even if you are a solo artist who produces his or her own songs, I think you should at least try to bring someone who knows what he's doing when you're recording vocals, so that you don't have to think about the whole technical stuff, because I think that's way better for your performance. And I'm saying it because that's what I'm doing right now with my songs, which is that I go to a different studio with a guy that I know, that I like how he works, and I focus only on singing, on trying to really think about what I was feeling when I wrote the song, what's the song about, and when you have to take care of the gain, of the mic positioning, of even pushing the play button,
Yeah.
comping, when you have to do all of that at the same time, it's way more difficult to be in the song. So I would recommend you guys, if you're a solo artist, try that.
Yes. 100% agreed. And I love that you're exploring this right now for yourself, Manel. Actually, I was on a kickoff call today with Mark, a new member of our coaching community as well. We always start the coaching with a kickoff call after the onboarding is done. And we define kind of first steps for him to work on, which is we picked a song that he wants to finish first. And the song is written, but it's still like in pre-pro arrangement mode, sort of. And one of his questions was like he wasn't sure about the key and the final tempo of the song, like two things we covered on the podcast in individual episodes because they're so important. And so we talked about this, and I helped him come up with a way to figure out what the right, or like what I would listen for if I was him, like how we can figure out the best key for the song and the best tempo and all that. And I'm saying it because he kept going back to questions like, oh, and like when I record this demo to figure all these things out, I found that it's like with my new interface that I got, it's a little weird because depending on how I set the gain, sometimes it's a little inconsistent. Sometimes it's like not loud enough, and then when I get louder, it will clip, and then I have to go back and turn it down. And then he asked me what I think is the best setting and if you should compress, or do something to reduce this inconsistencies there, and then a bunch of like technical questions like that, and then he made sure like if we get to those technical questions later, and he just kept going back to these, and I just kept reminding him that right now I don't care at all how you record this. It's not about the technical stuff at all. I want you to focus on how it feels so we can figure out the best pitch that gets the emotion across the best way, the best tempo for the song. And you can record it on your phone if you want. I don't care at all. It's really just about the song at this point. And this just reminded me of what you just said. There's the same thing is happening when you are supposed to focus on the emotional delivery of your performances when you record, and then you get distracted because the mic gain is too high or not high enough or whatever you just said there. It's the same thing. It's immediately taking you out of the actual question at hand and out of the zone there. And when I was talking to Mark, I know I tried to get him back to think about and focus on what actually matters and forget about the technical side, because the moment he would think about these things, he would completely forget what he was actually supposed to do, which is try the different, keys and see which one works for the song. And in the performance, you already know the key and all of that, but still, the moment something distracts you technically, you have to go back to that place and find the emotion again and all of that. It's just going to pull you out. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. Sometimes I went even as far as like, when I had a band in here and I wanted to get a really angry take out of someone because the song was supposed to be angry and feel wild and unruly and like aggressive and whatever. And if they were just shooting the shit with the band and they were just, funny and in a good mood, sometimes they didn't get the aggression along in the take. I was just not feeling it. So sometimes I had to intentionally make someone angry to just get that out of them. And of course I got to be careful with that. But it has been part of my job in the past to do that. To like really do something to piss them off intentionally to just so they can go to this place and deliver an emotional, angry performance. Or if someone has a really sad song and they're just not feeling it right now, sometimes I had to sit down with them and just talk about the story behind the song, just asking good, thoughtful questions, asking them about the song, which then reminds them often of the reason why they wrote it in the first place, and then all the memories come back and all that, and all of a sudden they're in this mood. And while it's not nice to have someone sad in front of you, it might be necessary to go there for a moment at least to capture that, and then it's out, and then you can go back to being happy again. I'm just saying, it's like all those emotions. So it just matters, because at the end, it's all about this. This is the one thing that AI can't do. This is the one thing why we still listen to art made by humans, why we look at art made by humans. It's because someone is turning whatever they have inside of them into a piece of art, and it only works if you really go there. So I can't stress this hard enough. So Does any on that topic, before we go to the other bullet points here, is there anything else that comes to mind when it comes to guiding someone through a performance? Things you personally did in the past that have worked or haven't worked, or lessons you've learned from that process?
Not really. I don't think I have much stuff to add. The only thing is that what I said in the last episode also, that I normally like to, just right before they start singing, I like to tell them, think about the song for a moment, like what it was about, like what it is about, and why did you write it, like what's behind. If it's about a person, think about this person, like if yeah, like if it was a film or something like that.
Yeah, true. And then obviously all the stuff we talked about on last week's episode, the preparing of the environment, we already talked about this, but make sure they feel good. Make sure you feel good when you're on your own. Do whatever it takes to get you in the mood to, have a certain lighting, have certain smells, whatever you need in the room. Just make sure everything is set up ideally, because if you optimize your environment, you'll just perform better. That's true in all areas of life, and especially also with this one. The better prepared you are, the better it's going to go. Cool. Now, the order of things. You said it in the beginning here as well, Manel. You talked to the people about, which part you want to do first, or if you want to do all at once. Or it's definitely, if it's a full band, you also have to decide at some point in which order you want to record the instruments, if it's overdubs, if it's not a live performance. So is there any preference or a certain approach that you have? Maybe it's completely different from artist to artist. I don't know, do you go to the chorus first maybe because that's better when you're still fresh and it's the most important part? Or do you warm up with, a verse and then you go to the chorus later? Or do you always do a full take? Or what's your approach when it comes to recording the order of things with a vocalist? And then maybe also the order in terms of instruments, if people play their own instruments as well.
When I'm working with artists, I don't have a way to do it. I just ask them, how do they want to do it? Because that's the most important thing. Like, I don't really have a preference. No. Normally, as I said, they prefer to do it in sections. But from time to time, there's this person who wants to do the whole thing over and over. So I don't have a standard way of doing it. I just always ask, because I want them to give me their best. So when I'm doing it, normally I do a couple of takes of the whole thing, and then we go section by section. But at the end, normally, even if we go section by section, what stays is what was in the first takes. Maybe with a couple of exceptions of tiny things, but for some reason I just, when I write the songs, they tell a story and it makes sense when I sing them from the top to the bottom. But yeah, it's all about asking the artist.
Yeah. And one thing you said there was sometimes the first takes that you did make it on the final recording. I would say that also means that you should always record everything, even if you're just telling the artist or yourself, it's just a warm-up take, which is getting into it. Record those. Sometimes those takes, when you feel like it's not really serious yet, sometimes those are the takes because you don't feel the pressure, and for whatever reason they feel great. Sometimes you get into in your head too much later, and I had that multiple times where I told the artist, well, do a couple takes so you can warm up. I'm going to get some levels right or whatever. And they'll just, slowly start. And I always record these. And many times, actually, I've gone back and used those early, no pressure takes kind of. So always record everything, just in case, I would say. Do you do, Manel, well, you said you don't have a particular preference, or you ask the artist, which I think is good, of course. But has it ever happened that an artist says to you, we have this one part that, or if it's multiple songs, we have this one song that I'm a little afraid of because it's really hard to sing, it's really high up, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to hit those notes or something? Or because if that happened to me, then I would try and be strategic about it, and I would have a conversation and be like, okay, does it make sense to do that early just because now we're fresh and the voice is still good and we can actually hit those notes and it's not going to be super exhausting yet? Or is it a bad idea because if we do that now, maybe your voice is going to be ruined after that and then the rest will sound different? Or, things like that. Sometimes you can be strategic about it, especially with rock music or anything aggressive. Doing like a really hard take that pushes you to your limits in the very beginning, it can be good if afterwards your voice maybe is a little more raspy. Maybe it's a technique thing, and if people have good technique it doesn't happen, but some people don't have good technique and it means the voice will suffer a bit, and that can be a good thing maybe, but it can also be a terrible thing. And all I'm saying is maybe it's necessary to sometimes be intentional about those things. And personally, if I get to choose it, I would not start with the absolute hardest thing. I would start with something to warm up, of course, and do a proper warm up before recording anyways. But I would do something that gets people a quick win, that feels good, where you have like something recorded that's exciting. But then pretty quickly, I would go to the most challenging thing, just because we're still fresh and we're warmed up now. And it's frustrating to do that at the very end when you actually want to go home and there's time pressure and all of that. So I would quickly go to the challenging thing and then something easy again afterwards. That's kind of my idea. But I don't know, have you ever had to make such decisions anyways?
Yeah, I had to, especially when I was singing for the metal band that I was singing years ago. But it all comes to analyzing the song and knowing the singer. In this case, it was myself. So you know your limits, I guess. And yeah, that's what I would say in that case. One thing that you mentioned that I think that is super important and not so many people do is warming up before recording.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, like the most of them, at least in my case, they do this warm-up takes or whatever, which are literal warm-up takes. Like they haven't been doing anything before doing that. And I think that's not, for me, like in my opinion, that's not the best approach. I think you should warm up at least a little bit before doing those. Because if you do that, then those warm-up takes will be better. Just saying, but
you're right.
So.
Yeah, but you're saying in some cases the order matters. If there's a very challenging take and maybe a very intimate one, maybe you need a clean voice for something and a raspy voice for something else. It matters.
Yeah, because at the end, our voice is worse with time.
Yeah.
So sometimes, even as you said, maybe you want to have your voice a little bit exhausted so that you can sing this tiny, lovely part, and it kind of feels more like raspy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But also you want to hit that high note, full power, because one thing is pretty obvious. If you start doing whole takes of a song and that's your approach, then you have to know the song really good, because it's not gonna be much more than 3 takes. Like more than 3 takes, I bet it's gonna be worse and worse and worse. Because it's like the intensity of your voice is gonna go down. So the choruses are not gonna hit the same way. I mean, of course, there are exceptions always, but I would say just prepare yourself.
Yes.
And go there and sing 3 takes, and that would be it,
Yes, I agree. Yeah, totally. Warm up is very, very, very important. And I remember that I think I told this story before. Maybe it was when Malcolm was still on this podcast. But again, so when for example, when I'm playing with my own bands, I was never the lead. For a very short period of time, I was a lead singer, but usually I'm just playing bass and doing backing vocals. And because I only do occasional backing vocals, I never really warmed up when we were touring. But it's really loud, intense backing vocals, a lot of screaming, but also high pitch, aggressive singing. But I was like, these couple, things there, I don't need to warm up. And I used to ruin, when we were on tour, day 2 of the tour, my voice was already gone just from singing those backing vocals always. And then I was suffering throughout the rest of the tour. And I always felt so stupid for like not warming up and always doing the same thing. And not just not warming up, but all the entire evening is exhausting for your vocals if you do. For your voice, if you do live shows, you know how it goes. You just, it's like you're yelling all evening basically to people in a loud environment. And so, yeah. But what I was saying is, I had 2 years ago, I had Andrew Neufeld here at the studio, who is the singer of a very famous band in the hardcore punk world called Comeback Kid, and he recorded vocals at my studio, which was super cool. And he just played a show the night before, and they also partied all night and all that. And he came to the studio, and I think I can say that. So I don't think Andrew is listening, but if you are, Andrew, I hope it's okay to share that. But it was very funny. He came here, he was, a little hungover, a little, from the day before and exhausted. I was like, oh my God, how is this going to work? Hopefully he has a voice and all that. And he came in, he did proper warm up and all that. Obviously he has great technique. So he stepped into the recording room, and like within 2 seconds, it was full on. Everything was there. Voice was there. Intensity was there. Everything was just perfect because, first of all, he has great technique. Secondly, he warmed up. He also warms up before the show, the night before, and all that. So he didn't really ruin his voice despite even the partying and stuff like that. So he did that. I was really impressed because it's really intense yelling and screaming. And it's really, if I did that, it would completely ruin my voice. And so it was really impressive. And I told him then, I was like, for a moment, I was afraid, like, we're not going to capture good takes here, but you obviously delivered. And so that was awesome. And then I told him that I am usually losing my voice, immediately when I just do backing vocals. And he looked at me and was like, you lost your voice after like 1 show or 2 shows of doing backing vocals? That's so cute. And I felt like even more stupid in that situation, yeah. But so all I'm saying is, practice and warm up really works. And if you're stupid amateur like I am, you don't warm up, you ruin your voice, and you can ruin the entire session, day, or tour, or whatever you're doing. So Manel is right there. Do that. Okay, so what else is there? Yeah, the other thing is the order of actual instruments. And I know, Manel, that in your case, you produce a lot where you record a lot of the instruments, you program drums or play whatever instruments. And so it's not always that you record like a full band. In my case, I recorded full bands more often. That's also something to think about. What I would recommend for most people is I would start with the drums or whatever the percussion, the heartbeat, the pulse of the song is. And so I would do that. And I would then quickly so what a lot of bands do is they record drums, and then, like, if they do overdubs at all, if it's not live, they record drums, and then they go to bass, and then they record guitars, and then they record vocals at the end. And they even do that for full albums where they would do all drums, all bass, all guitars, all vocals. And I used to do that a lot in my past too. I don't think it's a good idea to do it like that because, first of all, I would do the drums, yes, completely, because if you do real drums, that's going to be the biggest thing with all the setup and everything. And once it's done, I would just go through it and get it done, and so you can like remove mics and focus on other things. So I would batch the drums, yes. If you program drums, not even necessary maybe, but with real drums, yes, do all the drums. But then I would set up all the different other instruments if you can. So I would set up, the bass tone, the guitar tone, the vocals, whatever you have. And then I would go back and forth between those things if it's multiple songs. So I would say, let's record a rhythm guitar for this song. Let's do it before the bass because the song has probably been written on guitar, so guitar is more important. We want to make sure that's right. It's going to be easier to hear intonation on the bass later as well. So let's record the guitar first to this one. Then as soon as possible, as soon as we have a rhythm guitar there, maybe the bass, whatever, some foundation, let's put some vocals on there, and then go back and do some lead guitars and other additional layers. And so let's just mix it up a little bit because that way everyone stays fresh and it's kind of you get breaks in between. You don't have to power through 10 songs of just rhythm guitar and then 10 songs of just lead guitar. Like, have a little bit of a variety there so people can actually rest. And also it feels more like progress because if you do a full record with drums and then you do all the bass, for example, and then you go to the guitars, it takes forever until it finally feels like a song. And so if you do it a little earlier and you have some vocals in there and you get a song almost done, it's like you start to get a feel for what it's going to sound like, and it feels like more momentum. And the worst thing I think you can do is do all the vocals at the end in rock band scenarios, because first of all, people end up treating vocals as an afterthought instead of something really important. Like, it's the end of the session, everyone's tired already, you've been doing it forever, and you want to get done with it, and then you kind of make compromises on the one element that is most important. Maybe you took the drums and the guitars, whatever, really seriously, but then on the vocals, you kind of cut corners. That's one thing. And the other thing is the vocalist. If you have to sing through an album full of vocals at the end of it, while the whole band is watching, or even just one person, or even yourself, it's super exhausting, and it's like a very, very hard thing to do, versus recording a song, getting a break, listening to some guitar, then doing again the vocals. And like, I remember those sessions when I did 10, 12 songs, just vocals at the end, and it was always, at some point, it was really just everyone was struggling to get through that, basically. And that's not what you want with vocals. So maybe think about the order of things in a smart way, and do it like that. So I don't know if any of that is actually applicable in your productions, Manel, or if you think about it if you record your own stuff, or you produce for an artist and you record your own instruments, maybe you have a preference there, what you personally like to record first, second, and so on.
Well, not really, to be honest, because it depends on my calendar sometimes, because, like, for example, generally recording bass takes less time than recording guitars.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if I have a little space of like 1 or 2 hours, maybe I only record bass there instead of guitar, even if the guitars are not recorded yet. So it really depends on the song, but given that my process is very different, because I basically start making the demo at the same time that I'm sort of like recording, producing. So it's more, it's different. But I would love to try what the approach you mentioned if I was still in my band, right? Because when we recorded our albums, it was just the classic way, right? Like all the drums, and then we would start with guitars instead of bass.
Yeah,
because I was playing both the guitars and the bass, and for whatever reason, I think it was better for us to start with guitars. But yeah, then it would be all synthesizers, all vocals. So. And I think if we had the chance to do what you said, it would have been more enjoyable, probably.
Yeah, I totally think it's more enjoyable. I like, if you can do that with setting up these stations, as I used to call them, with different instruments, I think it's a better process for everyone. I get that if you only have like a Scarlett with 2 inputs, might not be possible, to have the guitar amp mic'd and the bass and everything ready to go. But even then, if you record a lot of things directly, maybe you can do, if it's all plugins anyways, all you need to do is remember the gain setting on your interface, and then have different channels ready with different amp sims and whatever, and then you can quickly plug in and out. So there's usually a way to do it, but it's definitely a more enjoyable process. So yeah, and when you record yourself, I think it depends on the song, but there's always an order that makes more sense than others. It's where you go about it. I would typically prioritize whatever is most important. That's why I say go get 2 vocals pretty early, to just make sure that everything else is serving the vocal, and that you're doing the vocal while you're still kind of fresh and objective. And then also, whatever the song's been written on, I want to do that pretty early on. So if your song is written on a guitar, I would do that before I do any additional stuff, even before bass and all that. If your song is based on drums and bass, and that's the core of the song, obviously start with that beat and do the drums and bass, whatever it is, or if it's a piano, or I don't know, but like whatever the song is written on. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, for example, for a riff-based rock band to start with the bass when the entire demo process was about the perfect guitar riff and like writing it on the guitar. So let's capture that guitar first, and then make sure the bass serves it actually. So
yeah, there are things that also influence how we play, right? Because
Yeah.
just
Oh,
as
good
you
point.
mentioned with vocals early on, sometimes when we record the demos, we're not in the right mood, or especially the vocalists, and it doesn't sound right or whatever. So maybe it's a good idea, as you said, to record those things simultaneously, so that you get the energy from everything, like powering the song or whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it, right?
I get it. Yeah. No, totally. Everything affects everything, and we react to what we hear. It matters. The order. Let's just put it that way. There's no one way to do it, but the order matters. It will cause you to make different decisions based on what's already there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So next thing, pretty quickly. I'm not going to go into details here, but learn how to edit on the fly to get the best possible results out of your sessions. Like simple editing, not crazy things, but it's an important skill to have where when you're recording, you want to be able to quickly comp, which is choose the parts that you like best and put them together to like one master take without deleting the rest in case you want to go back. So learn how to do that. Learn how to do simple cuts and crossfades and how to move things back and forth, because you want to be able, if you're two persons, people, even better, like the one who's operating the computer while the other person is singing or playing, you can already nudge things back and forth a little bit, adjust a couple things, so that when you hit play and listen back, it already sounds closer and feels better. So that is definitely a good skill to have. If you're doing it yourself, you're recording yourself, then figure out a way to do loop recording, like I said, a couple of takes on top of each other, then stop, then comp it together. And while you're recording, have a system in place that lets you make those decisions easily without having to listen back to everything again. Which means if I record myself, for example, if I record vocals for our band, what I do is I would set a loop here for the part that I want to record. I would hit record. I'll go into my recording room and I'll just let it run, and I'll record as often as I think I need until it feels right. And I'll have a little notepad with me that will just have a grid where it says take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, take 5, whatever, like just a list of takes. And I will have little symbols that I write next to these after each take that I've done. So I will have, for example, a up sort of arrow means good one, down means bad, horizontal means maybe, and so I have certain things that I just quickly can put something next to the take that I'm recording, so that when I hit stop and I go back to my control room here, I sit down at the computer, I look at this list and I'm like, okay, take 1 felt amazing, take 2 was definitely crappy, I can delete that, take 3 maybe I make a little extra note and say the end was good or something. Okay, take 3, let's look at the end. Take 4, bullshit. Take 5 felt really good, 5 stars, whatever I put there. And then, and that way I can make quicker decisions. I know what to listen to immediately. I don't have to go through all of it, and then because I will have forgotten. And then also, while I'm singing it, I have a good feel for what was actually good. So usually after the take, I know pretty well if something felt right or if it didn't feel right. And it's not about the technical perfection, but the feeling. And so I want to capture that initial reaction to what I just did, and I just trust myself that I made a good decision there, and then later the whole comping part is a lot easier, and I don't want to go through 10, 15, 30 takes again, listening to every single word, trying to remember what I've done. So something simple system like that, and then being able to edit on the fly is a good skill to have, to just make little decisions right away, because later the actual editing and mixing process will be a lot easier if you just learn to do that. Especially if you're 2 people, that's even better. Like usually when I record someone, by the time they come out of my live room, I've pretty much edited the performance. I just go in real time, and it's done. So yeah, there's that. And then Manel, have you ever had an amazing recording session only to then lose your entire day's work, basically?
No.
Good. It happens all the time to people. And this is why I have a final thing here, which is backups. Make sure that while you're recording, you have some sort of backup system in place. Ideally automatic. Best thing is automatic plus manual at the end of the day. But have some sort of backup thing, because the last thing you want is a day full of amazing takes and great experience and all of that, and then something happens and it's all gone and you have to do it again. So sounds trivial, but I've witnessed it again and again. People still don't do it, although it basically costs nothing. So have something like Backblaze or a Dropbox that record to, or a Time Machine on if you're on a Mac, or at least an external drive that you copy and paste things to. But then definitely something automatic as well. Just do it. Period.
Yeah.
Do you have a system in place there, Manel, or have you just been lucky so far?
I think I have been lucky because like I copy everything every day.
Yeah,
but I don't have like an automatic backup when I'm recording.
But you do backups every day at least.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's good. Yeah, but yeah, maybe you should look into some automatic backup thing. You have a Mac, you can do Time Machine easily, or even recording to a Dropbox or some sort of cloud will give you an automatic backup. So.
Yeah, I should definitely.
Yeah.
Or maybe someday I'll have the bad luck and I'll learn the lesson.
Yeah, or you never have to go there. But no, I get it. Yeah, at least do it daily. At least do that. But I wouldn't want to live without an automatic backup of some sort. And I know it's very unlikely that something dies during the session and you lose it. It's much more likely in between, so it's good that you do a daily backup. So that's probably just fine, but still, it feels better to know that this is happening. Also, autosave, things like that. Set your DAW so it automatically saves every 5 minutes or whatever. Easy thing to do in case it crashes, things like that.
That I have it. Yes.
That's good. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Good. So, bottom line, the recording session matters, and not the technical stuff. You've taken care of all of that before the session, but what you do during the session, how you guide someone through the session, how you perform, all of that ultimately matters. And all the stuff you put so much effort into before the step doesn't matter if you screw it up here and you don't deliver the way you could and should deliver your song. Very, very, very important. So I hope you take that seriously. I hope you focus on that. And I would much rather have you ignore some of the gear stuff and focus on that than the other way around. So, Manel, final thoughts on this? Does anything else come to mind that we forgot here?
No, just, remember to warm up.
Yeah. Yep. You don't want to be made fun of by a great pro who's showing you how to do it, like I was.
And also, I would say, make a conscious effort to maintain a good vibe in the room, in the session, in the recording, so that people feel good and feel like doing something that they will remember. Because that's what you're doing, recording things, so that they will be remembered, right?
Ooh, that's deep, man. I love that. That is so cool. Yes, you're capturing a moment in time so that this will be remembered. Yeah, that's true. So it makes, like, if you look at it from that perspective, I love that you had this. This is great. Like, if you look at it from that perspective, this explains very well why it matters, because there's this one chance, this one shot that you're capturing, and it is what it is. This is what will be remembered. And why would you not give it your best? Why would you capture something that is less than ideal? It's the one thing that you capture that will be remembered. And it's not just about the result. It's also the experience, like you said, the good vibe, because you also remember the experience. And part of why we do this is because we like it. It's fun. And we want to look back at a session, remembering it well as a great experience. That will make us do it again. That will, make us feel good when we listen back to our own music later. So even if the result is great, but the way to get there was terrible, maybe that's not what you want. Maybe you also want to remember a really lovely process.
Yeah. And what would think, someone who has made the song with AI, there's no process, there's nothing to remember, they are not going to remember, that day I clicked on the generate thing and it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That night of prompting, man, that was a really special night, Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something that AI cannot beat.
Yeah. And did you know, this is actually a funny topic here, interesting also, that just to give you an idea of like how precious music composers, musicians have been about this in the past, is like, did you know that when I have to start differently, people always are against new ways of doing things. So just as they, they are against using digital or using drum samples or using guitar sims or whatever. Now it's AI. I'm not fully against AI, by the way, as a tool for certain things, but I'm all for capturing real art made by humans. But what I'm saying is there's always resistance, when something new comes up. Did you know that originally, like way, way, way back, there was resistance against recording music in general? Like there was like the composers of classical music and like and whatever, when they first recorded to wax cylinders and whatever the early recording mediums were, they were against that because they said it's going to ruin the experience. You're supposed to be there in this one moment in time, listening to an orchestra play this thing, and you're supposed to be there. It's not supposed to be captured and then listened to somewhere else. It's like there, right? So you're going to ruin it, and recording is ruining it all. It's about being there with the musicians. So that was the first thing. There was resistance against recording in the first place, and then there was resistance against any new thing until it was accepted broadly, But that just tells you how important that moment in time is, that magical experience. How, and if you're going to capture it, capture the best possible version of it, so that then someone can relive that experience somewhere else and reconnect to those emotions and make it meaningful. That's what I'm saying. There's enough bullshit out there that doesn't mean anything to anyone. Make something meaningful. Yeah.
Yes, and wow, I have I think this is a good take that I have here.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
Because like when we're listening to music, we are listening to the past, right?
Yeah.
But when we're recording, we're listening to the present and the future, like how this thing is going to end up being. So that's so cool, I think.
You're right. You're totally right.
It is the only way to listen to the future.
Yeah. You're listening both to the past and the future at the same time. You listen to something that happened just a few moments ago, but then also you get a preview of what's going to happen when someone listens to it in the future.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
That was great.
It doesn't get any better than that, Manel. Let's cut it off here. Awesome. Thank you for that. Well, thank you for listening again to this. Soon we'll be through this entire series, and then I have plans for what's going to happen afterwards. There's like a couple more, but we're almost done here. If you haven't checked out steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, please go back and do that. And if you want someone to guide you through all of these steps, so you make sure you don't cut corners, you do all of that properly, and you can focus on what really matters the most, please go to theselfrecordingband.com and apply for coaching, because this is exactly what we do. We have worked through this process time and time again, over and over again with countless artists, and we can walk you through this process so that you do all the steps, but you don't have to worry that you miss something. You don't have to worry about how to do it. We'll show you what to do, how to do it, so that you get the result that you want. So we're not making our record, we're making your record, but we make sure you don't cut corners along the way. We're making sure you don't get overwhelmed with all the information out there. We give you exactly what you need in order to accomplish your goals. We give you feedback, precise next steps, and walk you through all of it. And once you've done it all yourself, you'll be able to apply these things over and over again, because then you have a proven system, a proven process that has worked for many, many other artists that all the pros and studios use. And I would love to see you in there. So go to theselfrecordingband.com and fill out a quick form, and then we'll look at it. We'll listen to your demos that you already have or your existing music. If it's a great fit, we'll jump on a call with you and discuss it and see if we can work together. And if not, we'll part ways, and at least you get an idea of what the next steps would look like, what I would do in your situation. Yeah. And if you want someone else to do the lovely process for you, and all you really need to do is perform, go to manelitomusica.com and talk to Manel, or find him on Instagram or in the show notes of this episode. And then you can hire a producer and just be an artist and not worry about the recording side of things at all. It's definitely an option for many people. We're here. You know how to reach us. Let's talk about your next project. See you next week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.